Let's turn our attention to building layout views with Razor. Layout views are similar to master pages and ASP.NET Web Forms, because layout views are going to be the views where we place all of our common HTML infrastructure. Tags like the doc type and HTML and head tag, as well as the body tag. The layout view might be the place where you include all the scripts that your application is going to need, the common navigation menu, the common footer, all those things that you need to render everywhere in your application. You want to extract and refactor that HTML out into a layout view so that the HTML doesn't have to be duplicated inside of every view. A layout view will then contain method calls where other individual views that are tied to a specific controller action can plug in content. This is done by using the render body and render section method calls. In this code snippet, when we invoke render body here inside of the Razor view, that gives another view, the primary view for this controller action, the ability to inject its content inside of the body tags. Let's take a look at how this works. Inside of the view that we've been using to display instructor information, we are not yet using a Razor layout. In fact, we're explicitly setting layout equals null inside of this top code block. I'll explain more about that in a minute. What I want to do is switch over to using a layout and to get rid of all the infrastructure HTML that would have to appear in every view. The doc type, the HTML, the head tag. We're going to remove all that stuff and leave just the essence of what this view is responsible for, displaying this div and the information inside of it. It turns out there is a layout view provided for us when we create a new MVC application. It lives in the views shared folder and its name is _layout.cshtml. So yes, layout views have the same file extension as regular views, which have the same file extension as partial views. They're all just template files. It depends on how you use them as to whether they're going to be layout or partial views or regular views. To use that layout, I just need to specify a full path to that file, including the file extension. And now my view will have a layout. If we look inside of layout.cshtml, it contains everything that we expect. It has a doc type, the HTML tag, the head tag, the body tag. It includes the application's cascading style sheet. It includes jQuery, which we'll probably be using all over the site. It also includes that magic method render body. When you invoke render body, what you are asking for is that your primary view, which on the request we're about to make is going to be index.cshtml, you're asking that that view be rendered and the output put right here where render body exists. So everything in that index view should be placed right here. And notice that we do not have to do anything special to mark this area as our content area or the body or anything like that. There's no tokens or identifiers. It's just a convention that when you use render body, you'll get what is inside of this template. Let's go ahead and execute this view. And we'll see that it doesn't change the output at all, but the application is going to be a little bit easier to maintain. If we look at the page source, it has our CSS, our jQuery files, and it has the div with all the content that we expected. But one thing to notice is that we do not have a title, but this is easy to fix. If we come back into Visual Studio, notice that in the layout view, it does output viewbag.title in between the title tags. All we need to do is to set that property inside of index.cshtml, and we can do that before we set the layout so that the title is available. We could call this the instructor index page. Save this and refresh our view. And you'll notice we get the instructor index page title. Now let's take a look at the scenario where we want a Razor content view to plug into multiple independent points in the layout view. That is, in addition to render body, which is going to take the main content from the content view and put it inside of this body div, we also want some divs somewhere else where we want to be able to take content from the main view, from the content view, and plug it into these areas. This is where we can turn to the render section method. With render section, you ask for a section by name to be rendered inside of this location. we still control the HTML that surrounds the body and determines where the header is going to be placed, but we want individual views to be able to plug in their own custom content here. After I add render section and come out and refresh the browser, what we'll find is that we get a runtime exception. That's because by default, when you tell the runtime to render a section and it doesn't find that section, it's going to throw an exception. But you can make a section optional. If a view isn't required to provide this header content, then we can say required is false, and I'll save the layout view, refresh this page, and everything is working again. We haven't plugged anything into that header just yet, but let's come back and do that now. To define the content for a specific section, you just use @section, provide a name, and provide the content. So we can say this is a custom header from index. Save this, come back and refresh our application. And now we've plugged in a custom header into the layout where we have render section. But what if that section truly is optional and we want to provide some default content for that header inside of our layout page? In that case, we need a simple if-else statement. What we can do is we can say if and invoke a helper method called isSectionDefined, which is essentially saying if we have a header section, then go ahead and render that header section right here inside of this div. Otherwise, I want to provide some default content. So I can say that this is the default header. So as it stands right now, our index view has a header defined. So I'm still getting the custom header from the index. But let me come into the index and Control-K, Control-C to comment out that section header and refresh the view. And you can see now that we don't have that section defined in the index view, we're pulling the default content out of our layout.